So, hey everyone, today I'm talking with Jeremy. He's a writer on French football for the excellent online website French Football Weekly, an English language website that focuses on all things associated with French football, both the national team and the French leagues. So, we're going to be talking today about the upcoming World Cup and how Jeremy thinks France is going to do. So, welcome, Jeremy. Thanks for joining me
Thanks
this
very
evening.
much.
So, just go back to French Football Weekly. How did you get involved in this website, and where did you get the passion for French football?
Well, I'm actually particularly France. I think probably my earliest memory is watching the 1986 World Cup with France. So when I first sort of got into Twitter 5-6 years ago, one of the first things I did was look up French football sites. So I sort of started following French Football Weekly as a fan, then asked if I could contribute a bit, and now I've ended up pretty much being one of the main editors and runners of the site.
Okay, and what is it about French football that arouses such passion for you?
Well, as I said, I mean, a lot of it is just because I was sort of born with it, brought up with it. Because my mum's French, I've kind of got my own French home team as well, Federal West, which is Metz. And I think it's very underrated. Well, I mean, the national team is not underrated. I think they are appreciated and have been for a long time now. The league itself, I think, is underrated because there's such a prolific producer of excellent young talents, which quickly get poached by the bigger, richer leagues. It's for all of us on the site, it's kind of a source of amusement and frustration that 1 minute you've got fans of certain big English clubs kind of making fun of the league and calling it a farmers league, and the next minute, lauding Eden Hazard or Mane or Sadio Mane or players who've come from that league.
Mm-hmm. And a lot of English people the last few years have started going to Bundesliga matches. Do you think will there anything be like that in the future where they start going to French league matches?
I think it could happen. I mean, similarly to Bundesliga, it's a much more accessible league when you go to France. There's a few issues at the moment, particularly in terms of away supporters, but I think it's maybe PSG aside, it's relatively easy to get tickets to matches to any of the clubs. Mm-hmm. Much more reasonably priced than in England as well. So, and obviously it's just the hook across the channel. So there's no reason why it shouldn't be so. I think the German league's got a reputation for being more exciting at the moment in terms of the football played. But France have just signed by far the biggest TV deal that it ever has done. So it certainly looks like things are on the up, and I think it's a sort of virtuous circle as the league gets more exposure and people start watching it more rather than just assuming it's not a very good league, and hopefully it will grow in popularity.
And have you seen that yourself with the magazine? Because I was just before I'm talking to you, I was just checking out your podcasts, and they seem to be very well received by the public. I mean, so do you find that there's more and more people getting into French football from the UK?
Yeah, I think so. It's actually interesting that we seem to get a lot of followers from America as well. So maybe they come to it with less sort of prejudices about certain leagues in Europe. I don't know, mm-hmm. But even in the UK, I mean, despite what I said earlier, I think it's got to stick. A lot of the top teams have benefited from players who've been brought up in France, so they must begin to appreciate that it can't be as bad as all that. And certainly with teams like PSG and Monaco, Marseille this year doing well in the European competitions as well, it's all going to help.
Okay, so let's get down to the brass tacks then. The World Cup. I mean, how do you think France will do this year?
They should do well. I'm not one of those who think that they're one of the absolute favourites. I still think that certainly Brazil, Germany, and Spain are stronger. But I'd definitely say that France is sort of the next level down. And if they don't get to the semi-finals, I'd be disappointed. Anything more than that, I think, is a bonus. But I think that's semi-finals is the least they should be aiming for.
Yeah, I'm looking at my little. I wrote it all down here. France, so we might get to see Brazil in the semis. Is it?
I haven't. I'm too superstitious. I haven't worked my way all the way through the draw yet.
Yeah. I'm of similar opinion. I think France probably could get to the semis. Yeah, they really have a good squad. Is there a difference between this French team and the French teams of the past, more specifically the Euros? Have they improved since the Euros?
I think they have, in the sense that a couple of the, I mean, we're still quite a young team in the Euros, but obviously a few of those players are now 2 years more experienced, and we've also obviously got a couple of the real young talents who've kind of come through since then. So the obvious one is Kylian Mbappe, Ousmane Dembele, Thomas Lemar as well, Corentin Tolisso in midfield as well. So I think it's certainly a stronger squad, I would say. Defence, there's still question marks. I mean, at the time of the Euros, we still had Evra at left back. I've never been a fan of his, so I think Benjamin Mendy is an upgrade. But there's still a couple of positions where we're unsure. Loris isn't in the form that he was in 2 years ago, I don't think. Paul Pogba certainly isn't. I mean, even 2 years ago, he was one of those sort of mercurial one match on, one match off players. Now I'd say it's probably 3 matches on, 1 match on, 3 matches off. So there are still concerns there, but overall I'd say I think it's a stronger team and certainly a stronger squad.
Yeah, it does appear that way, all right. And with France's group, then it's a very manageable group, I think. I mean, Australia, Peru, that should be 6 points. Denmark might be a tough one, but they should top that group, shouldn't they?
They should, and I'm trying to sort of combat my natural pessimism. I feel like it's certainly the winnable group. It should be a winnable group, but I'm still nervous that it's not going to be entirely straightforward either. I mean, Australia, I think, can be difficult to break down, and the first match of the World Cup, when everyone's a bit nervous, I think it's a little bit of a leveller. You know, the recent international break, the one before the end of the season, we lost to Colombia, and then Australia held them to a draw. So, you know, it's not straightforward comparing the 2 matches, but it shows that they've certainly got something about them. Peru have got an excellent record the last 2 or 3 years. Obviously did well to come through South American qualifying, but you look at their record, they're very, very hard to beat. And Denmark are a strong European team. I mean, you can look at Denmark being in the group as a good or bad omen, because they were in France's group in '98 and in 2000, but then they were also in France's group in 2002, and we sort of crashed and burned. So what would be lovely would be for it to be like in '98, and for us to play Denmark the match having already qualified. You can relax a few seconds.
Do you care to give me a score prediction for each game, Jeremy?
I'm useless at predictions, but I would say a flattering 3-1 win against Australia. Just got such a bad feeling about Peru. I'm not sure why. I'm going to say 1-1 against Peru, and then a sketchy 2-1 win over them.
Yeah. I actually did a write-up on Peru today, and I was kind of surprised. I mean, they haven't lost in, I think, nearly 2 years.
Yeah, exactly.
So they're probably not as bad as we initially think, you know, because they haven't been there since 1982. But you know, you're right. That could be a tough one. So the coach Didier Deschamps, I think he's doing a decent job. I think. Is that the feeling in France?
I think it's very much split down the middle. I'm pro Deschamps. I'm a big fan of his. He came in obviously after 2010, when after the strike on the bus in Neisner, and brought to the sort of lowest ebb possible. Laurent Blanc began improving things in terms of discipline and morale and everything, and Deschamps has really taken it a step further. And he's sort of, you know, he's just got massive respect in France for everything he's won as a player, also as a coach, and he's a deceptively strong character. He's kind of quite small, but bit of a relatively high-pitched voice and a bit of a speech impediment. I think some people don't take him too seriously, but he really commands respect and always has done wherever he's been. And I think he's really improved the squad and improved the discipline and the harmony and the atmosphere within the squad. I think things turned during the Euros, actually. I think a lot of people thought that he wasn't entirely sure about his best team or his best formation, and it's kind of carried on from there. I think if they'd won the Euros, obviously everyone would forget about how they managed to do it, and the matches, for example, against Ireland, where they struggled, and group stages, there were a couple of poor performances as well. Because they didn't win it in the end, I think there were a lot more questions, and he is, by nature, I think, a relatively cautious coach.
I guess they're really going to miss Dimitri Payet, really.
It's difficult to say. If you're talking about the Dimitri Payet that's played most of the last 2 years, no, they won't miss him at all. It's been more. The Dimitri Payet of the last 6 months has been fantastic, and barring the injury, would definitely have played his way into the squad. There are actually still a few people who thought maybe he wouldn't make the squad because, first of all, he's got a history of not helping the defence out at all, which Deschamps doesn't like, but also because he wasn't necessarily guaranteed to be a starter, and possibly is one of those players that, in his 30s with a lot of cats behind him, may not have taken too well to not starting, to being in the squad but not starting. So there were some that still thought that it might be an issue, and I think his injury possibly did Deschamps a few favours. But certainly the way he's been playing the last few months, any team would miss that.
Yeah, I mean, he has been on form the last few months. So generally, Pogba, I mean, will he get his head sorted for the World Cup? I mean, it's his chance to shine in front of the world,
He says he will. He said that, he's been quoted as saying, 4 years ago I was the young player of the tournament, this time I want to be the player of the tournament. But yeah, he really needs to sort himself out. And, there's a growing number of people, including me, saying that I'm not convinced he should even start at the moment. Corentin Tolisso at Bayern Munich has been playing, has really taken his chances when he's played for France. He's been man of the match for the last 2 friendlies. And if it was a toss-up between the two, personally, I'd start with Tolisso at the moment. No one doubts the talent that Pogba has got, and it's hard to leave him out because he can be a match winner on his day. It's just that those days seem fewer and further between us.
And who are you looking forward to seeing in the French team? Is there any players that perhaps we don't really know this side of the world, but maybe are under the radar? Young players, new players, players from the French league.
To be honest, I'm not sure there's that many that are probably not well known at the moment. I mean, I'd say of the attacking players, probably Lamar is the least well known, even though he's been very much connected with Arsenal and Liverpool in the past. He's not much to look at in the sense that he's very short, slightly built, looks very unassuming, but he's got a fantastic left foot, and when he and Mendy were both at Monaco, they had an amazing understanding. So if Lamar starts, which I don't think he will at the moment, they could cause some damage down the left. I'd say Mbappe is probably the one to look out for, but again, he's not exactly a well-kept secret. Second or third most expensive player in history, but he could really light up this World Cup. And then the one that Liverpool fans will probably be looking out for, because there's so many rumours, is Nabil Fekir. He's one that probably a lot of English fans won't necessarily have seen play that much, but if he plays, and he's more likely to be the backup to Griezmann. He's a brilliantly skillful left-footed player.
So Dembele, he's had a great season because he did nothing, so he must be very fresh and eager to do something in the World Cup, I'd say, rearing to go.
Yeah, I think he's been a bit unlucky with injuries, and I think no smoke without fire. There's been so many rumours about him either leaving Barcelona or then sending him out on loan. I think he must have been a little bit unsettled there. But since he's been back to full fitness, and in the last sort of 5-10 matches at Barcelona, he actually had a very good record in terms of goals and assists. And I said against Italy the other day, there was a lot that he did that was very average, but then he also sort of ran the length of the pitch himself and hit a fantastic shot that came off the bar, and then later on scored a beautiful first-time shot into the top corner. So that's what you get with Dembele. You get a lot of sort of frustration and then a couple of moments of genius. So he, I think, may well start. If Giroud doesn't and they go with the front three, I think he'll probably start. And as you said, I mean, he should be quite fresh because he's been out for a lot of the season, and hopefully he'll be able to terrorise a few defences.
France have been doing pretty okay in the friendlies and in the build-up. So what is Deschamps learning from the friendlies? Do you think he's gonna stick to a certain formation, or is there any players that have pushed themselves into the starting 11 or pushed themselves out of the starting 11?
I think of the recent friendlies, possibly the most he's learned is from the defeat against Colombia, because France pretty much outplayed Colombia for the first 20-30 minutes, and then Colombia got a little bit more stuck in and pretty much bullied France for the rest of the match and came out on top 3-2. So I think maybe he's learned a lot more from there, basically not take your foot off the gas. Don't be bullied, which I think is a problem with some of the French players. They could be a bit lightweight, both mentally and physically. So I think he's learned more from that. The recent ones, the main thing he's learned is that, first of all, the two injury doubts at fullback both seem fit. Secondly, more importantly, the two backup fullbacks both look very, very capable. And then, as I said earlier, in terms of playing their way into the team, I think the main one is probably Corentin Tolisso at Bayern Munich, who really, really has been excellent and may change Deschamps' thinking in terms of the midfield. And may even help him decide between the midfield 2 or 3, actually. So
you think that Colombia game, they didn't like the physical aspect of it, some of the players? I mean, that wouldn't bode well then for a team like Australia or Denmark, because they're quite physically strong teams.
That's exactly my concern, and that's another reason why, again, it could go either way. And some people would say, sure, he needs to be in there to sort of give as good as he gets, and others would say that a speedy lightweight 3 could sort of run past all these bulky defenders. It depends on the way you look at it, but I'm hoping it's a wake-up call. I mean, they do have strong players who can get stuck in if they want to, but it has been a sort of frequent thing. I mean, 4 years ago when we lost to Germany, the goal was scored by Hummels basically bullying Varane off the ball, and certainly Varane is one of those who a lot of people feel hasn't really improved that aspect of his game in the last 4 years. So it is something to be aware of, I think, possibly something that, the 3 group opponents may well rely on a little bit.
Get stuck in,
yeah.
So how do you define the French football fan? I mean, are they... do they put out the bunting, the flags before the tournament? Do they get excited, or is it, just for match day, or are they realistic in their expectations? Are they confident? Blah, blah, blah. So, what is the typical French football fan pre-World Cup and during the World Cup?
I think compared to France, Italy, Spain, where football is pretty much a religion. It's never been sort of to that extent. I think everyone likes football, but often it's people's second favourite sport. Weirdly, you hear people say, "Yeah, my favourite teams are PSG and Marseille," which is like saying, "My favourite teams are United and Liverpool." You can't do that. So I think I'm not saying they're plastic fans, but I don't think people are quite as passionate. So I wouldn't say that they're fans just for the day of the match, but I think certainly during the World Cup period, especially if France are doing well, there will be a sort of big, kind of momentum behind them. People get very excited about it. Whenever there's France matches, there's great atmospheres in the pub or in public squares if they're showing matches, that kind of thing. But if France lose, a lot of the fans will just sort of say, "Oh well, there's always 2 years on," and then walk off. Whereas, you know, other fans will be sort of ripping clothes and going into mourning for a few days.
They always have the rugby, I suppose, but they're not much good at that. They're not much good at that either these days.
No, not at the moment.
Will there be many French supporters going out to Russia? Do you know?
I don't know. I mean, I'm always surprised because of everything I just said. I'm always quite surprised that there always seems to be a decent French contingent when they play abroad. So I assume there'll be a few going. There has always been a bit of a sort of France-Russia love-in. I think, a few sort of cultural and political connections in the past. So it's not. I don't think it holds the sort of fear for French fans that maybe it does for a lot of English fans. So I think there'll be a decent enough crowd there. Yeah.
And what about yourself, Jeremy? Are you going yourself to Russia?
No, I'm not. I went to a couple of Euro matches 2 years ago.
Okay.
I may, if France get to the final, I may pop over to France for it. But no, I'm going as far as Russia.
Okay, yeah. I guess it's just a bit too far away, and the travelling.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, up and down the country.
If anyone's got any last-minute free tickets, just take them.
So generally for the World Cup, Jeremy, who do you think will win the thing?
So as I said, I think the three favourites for me are Germany, Spain, and Brazil. I still think there's something. I know they've improved a lot from 4 years ago, but I still feel there's something slightly mentally lightweight about Brazil. That may just purely be because of what I see of Thiago Silva and Neymar playing in France. So I'm still not absolutely convinced. So I think whoever wins if it comes to it, Germany-Spain semi-final, I think Germany and Brazil could be in the second round actually. But I think for me it's one of Germany or Spain.
Well, I think it's if Brazil and Germany win their games, it's Brazil-Germany final. So that's what and that would be a great matchup, I think. Dark horse, and don't say Belgium. Well, okay.
Dark horse.
Maybe
does Uruguay? Does that count as a dark horse?
Yeah. Well, if you want to say Belgium, I mean everybody says Belgium, but
I suppose they're a dark horse because so far they flattered to deceive, and I'm not sure Everton fans would necessarily agree that Martinez is the man to bring them glory, but on paper they're a fantastic team. They should be doing well, and they've got an easy group.
Yeah, relatively, I suppose. And Uruguay, you said Uruguay.
Sorry, that was a dig at England.
Yeah, I know. And Uruguay, you fancy Uruguay as well?
I think that I think they generally have a strong, physically strong, mentally strong team, sort of from the back forwards. But it's a case of whether they have those sort of magical players that can make a difference further up. And this year, I think they do. I think they have two or three. I'm still not absolutely convinced about Cavani as a scorer at the very, very top level, but I think they could do well.
Yeah, they could actually meet France in the last 8, I think.
There's a team that can bully France.
Yeah, kick lumps out of them. So French-based players that are playing in their squads, is there from the French league? Are there any players that maybe some of the African teams or that we probably don't know too well about?
Yeah, I mentioned earlier that I support Metz. They're my French team, so I've got a bit of interest in Senegal because they've got 3 extremely good attacking players who all came through the system at Metz. In Sadio Mane is obviously an amazing season at Liverpool, and also Diafra Sakho and Ismaila Sarr, the 2 forwards. And Sakho started well at West Ham, and then injury problems. The rest of his career wasn't so great. He's now at Rennes and hasn't pulled up any trees there, so I'm not sure if he started. But alongside him is Ismaila Sarr, who's also at Rennes, signed from Metz, and I think at African Cup of Nations he was the youngest player there. again, a year or so further down the line. He's a bit like Dembele. He can be wasteful, but at times he can be fantastic. So I'm interested in keeping an eye on them. And then Morocco and Tunisia both got some very skillful French-based players up front. I think Tunisia, there's possibly. I mean, they could even start together behind the striker. They've got Kawi, who's at Marseille but been on loan at Troyes. We've got Khazri, who's obviously with Sunderland but been on loan at Rennes again, and Naim Sliti, who's possibly the most exciting of the three, who's at Lille but been on loan at Dijon and had a really strong finish to the season. So England certainly should be wary of him.
Apart from the World Cup, what about the French football season this year? I guess PSG ran away with it again, but I noticed Ranieri ended up at Nantes.
Yeah.
I halfway through the season I found that out, and I was kind of surprised. And they were doing okay for a while, and then their season went belly up near the end. And so generally, who disappointed this year in France, and who was the surprise in the French league? Is it too easy for Paris Saint-Germain? So just maybe a few words on the French league.
Yeah, it's a problem. I think the problem is that because the French league is a selling league, and even the teams at the top like Monaco, Lyon, Marseille, they develop these excellent players. Lyon in particular have got a fantastic youth development policy. Monaco have got a sort of project where they young talents and then sell them for huge profits. So even these three teams, I don't think are able to build any kind of legacy. So in recent years, one or other of them has been able to challenge PSG a bit, but none of them are able to sort of sustain it over a few years. So PSG are always going to come out on top. I mean, obviously they didn't last year, but more often than not, they're going to, because they can have some kind of consistency, whereas the other teams have a great season and then sell all the players that made that season. Classic example this year was Monaco. So in terms of, it's hard to talk in terms of disappointment, because in a way I think those three teams overachieved. I think you could argue that all three of them are in transition. Lyon sold Tolisso and Lacazette in the summer, two of their most important players, and brought in a few more kids who've been brilliant. Marseille, really shocked people by sustaining a strong European campaign, both in the Europa League but also in order to qualify next year. And Monaco still finished second despite losing the half of their title-winning team. So in a way, the season's been disappointing because it was very easy for PSG. But at the same time, I think those three teams have shown promise for next year, and I think next year could be tighter. And what's very good is that in all of the matches that have all been televised in England, all of the matches between the top teams, sort of big Sunday night headline matches, they've generally all been excellent matches with lots of goals, apart from the one match where PSG ran away with it 7-1 against Monaco. They've all been closely contested and some great football on display. So going back to what you said at the start, I think that's a really good advert for Ligue 1 football. Okay,
good. So where can people find your stuff online? Was it French Football Weekly?
So the website is FrenchFtWeekly.com. Our Twitter account is FrenchFtWeekly. There's also @The Short Pass, and my Twitter account is Jeremy Smith 98.
Okay, and will you be
homage to work to the France on the World Cup?
Okay, yeah. So you'd be updating everybody daily on the happenings and.
Yeah, I'll be trying my best. A bit of transfer rumours, a bit of gossip, maybe a bit of Benzema bashing. We'll see.
Yeah, but he wasn't expected to make the squad, was he?
No, not under Deschamps. No. I don't think he deserved it anyway. Five league goals is not good enough.
Yeah, I did see like you'd always have the last player on the list, and it's just an easy thing for a person to write. And Benzema still has hope. Okay, Jeremy, that's pretty much it. You've been more than gracious with your time. So thanks very much. Bye bye.
Thanks a lot. You too. See ya.
Bye bye.